The next piece that we can talk about here is Taking Shape 2, which talks about some of the interesting, crazy, why didn't they do that, all over the place of different ideas that they've had for Halloween movies, like the Halloween movies we never saw, and can you tell us a little bit about Taking Shape 2 here?
Yeah, and so with Taking Shape 1, when I started that book, I had planned on there being an appendix at the back of the book that would just kind of mention the unmade sequels, the sequels that were written but never filmed. It was just going to be an appendix, maybe a few pages. And the more I researched that, it grew into, it became too big to be an appendix. And so I said, okay, it's going to be the last chapter of the book. And then once I brought Travis on board, my co-writer, Travis Mullins, we kept researching, and all of a sudden it became several chapters. And at some point, we realized that about half the book now comprised of lost sequels. And we're like, well, that's not good. You can't have a book about Halloween where half of it is the unmade sequels. And so it spun off into its own book. And it's this is Taking Shape 2, The Lost Halloween Sequels, the book that started as an appendix and grew into a 600-page beast. I mean, it's actually, I'll show them to you. Taking Shape 2 is actually longer than Taking Shape 1. Because Taking Shape 1 looks at 11 movies, and Taking Shape 2 looks at 24 movies that were written and planned but never made. I mean, there's sequels here that people have heard about, like Michael versus Pinhead. Like, everyone knows that was seriously discussed. And Halloween 3D, everyone knows that was very nearly made. But we look at sequels here that were written and planned but never announced. So it's the making of lost movies that fans have never even heard of.
For this one, the easiest thing for me is to actually just take, some of the marketing tools for it and just see if we can just briefly hit on a couple of things that are out there in terms of marketing. Like first one being the alternate Halloween 3 pitch decades after the first one. So what's the situation there?
Yeah, and so before they did, and this is where my memory fades a little bit, before they did the 2018, God, I keep saying 2019, it was 2018, the Blumhouse Halloween, the decade prior to that almost, they really didn't know what to do with the franchise after Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. And so one of the angles that they suggested was to go back and what if we could do the movie that took place in between Halloween 2 and 4? So where was Michael during that, that time? And it was really interesting. It went back in time and had Michael escaping the blaze at the end of Halloween 2, and then going to nearby, I think, Russellville. Russellville is one of the towns that we learn in the series is near Haddonfield, and committing a slaughter there that no one really had heard of. I think it was half sequel, half prequel, actually. But it was, and of course, it situated itself as an alternate Halloween 3 in the timeline, had Halloween 3 incorporated Michael Myers, but also it had some fun nods to the Halloween 3 we did get, Season of the Witch. So it was fun.
And there were versions of Halloween 4 that they actually wanted to have Laurie Strode in the movie?
Yes. Oh, man. So that's one of the biggest discoveries we made with Halloween 4 was that the very first version they wrote that Mustafa Akkad officially sanctioned, hired screenwriters and paid them, was a version that had Laurie Strode in it. Laurie Strode and Dr. Loomis. And this was before they realized Jamie Lee Curtis wasn't going to return. They just assumed that she would. And this version finds Laurie Strode living in Chicago. Haddonfield being in Illinois, I guess Chicago is the nearest metropolitan city. And this one is like the MTV Halloween because it's got rock music and rock stars in it. And it's a big city. And Michael murders a rock star and steals like his leather pants and gloves and jacket. And so it's a completely different shape than what we're used to, but it might have been interesting. And in this Halloween 4, Laurie Strode was going to be a patient of Dr. Loomis's, and they were going to have therapy sessions, which would have really been interesting as a fan to see them just having that kind of doctor-patient relationship. And I hate that we didn't get to see that. You know, one of the Halloween 4s they did, John Carpenter personally supervised the writing of. It was by novelist Dennis Etchison, who wrote the novelizations of Halloween 2 and 3. If you've got the old paperbacks, he wrote those. John Carpenter personally picked him to write Halloween 4, and that Halloween 4 is wild. Michael Myers is kind of like a ghost, and it's really different. He comes back to Haddonfield, and he's chasing after Tommy Doyle and Lindsay Wallace, who are now teenagers. And the ending takes place at a drive-in movie theater where he grows to like 12 feet tall, so like super shape. God, there's so many different crazy ideas in here, but those are two of them for Halloween 4.
And Halloween 6 was nearly produced by Quentin Tarantino?
Yeah, it was. This was right after he had done Pulp Fiction, and so Miramax was loving everything having to do with Tarantino. And we were able to, you know, we didn't get an interview with Quentin himself, but we were able to get an interview with the screenwriter on his version, and we were able to get the director that Quentin had handpicked to direct it. So they offered it to Quentin to direct, and he said, "I'm not going to direct it. I might write it, and I'll produce it." And he recommended a director, Scott Spiegel, who was screenwriter on Evil Dead 2. He's done a lot of great horror movie stuff. You might know that name. He directed From Dusk Till Dawn 2, and he's done some other great work in the genre. He was going to direct it, and we got an interview with him talking about just, you know, why didn't it happen? Why did he back away? Why did Quentin back away? And I'm not sure that one was ever going to be the right direction for the franchise, but you can't not be curious about what Quentin Tarantino, even as a producer, would have brought to the series.
And there were 3 possible sequels to Halloween Resurrection?
Yeah, so Dimension was really kind of in a pickle after Halloween Resurrection because the movie wasn't a hit and the storyline wasn't very popular with fans, and so they really didn't know where to take it. There was a lot of indecision on what to do with Halloween 9. This was, of course, before they had chosen Rob Zombie to remake it. At the time, they were thinking, let's do a direct sequel in the same continuity. And those sequels tended to bring back Busta Rhymes' character, Freddy Harris, who I thought was done pretty poorly in Resurrection. I think the Freddy Harris character was done more interesting in the original script, but they made him kind of a clown in the movie. He didn't have to be. And so in the sequels to Resurrection, you get a more serious Freddy Harris. And those were neat. Those were fun to read. Some of them, one of them was like the ultimate Haddonfield reunion movie where they brought back, where Freddie Harris is the main character, but they brought back all these characters from the other sequels. They brought back Sheriff Meeker, Sheriff Brackett. They brought back Tommy Doyle. They brought back Lindsay Wallace. They brought back Lance Guest's Jimmy, the paramedic from Halloween 2. I mean, it was just like this huge reunion to where the Shape had all of his kind of victims that got away in one place. That might have been fun to watch. It might also have been a complete shit show. I don't know.
So there was a reboot idea for 2 Shapes and another one with 100, you know.
Yeah, so one of the ideas they were gonna, one of the ideas was to reboot the franchise, start from Michael's childhood and go forward. And that one of those envisioned 2 Shapes, 2 little boys that went bad in their youth and became murderous psychopaths. And that one defies description. That one is so out there, I can't even describe it and do it justice. You'll have to read the book. I think it turns out to be really interesting because it's got so many twists. It completely re-envisions, you know, Michael's home life and the Dr. Loomis character, but it might have worked. The other one with 100 Shapes, Steph Hutchinson, whom I just mentioned, that wrote the second unproduced Halloween 3D, at one point he envisioned not just a remake, but a remake trilogy, 3 movies that would have wildly reimagined the franchise. And in the third movie he did, that he wrote a treatment for, there was a kind of and I'm not going to do it justice by describing it, but there's a kind of hypnosis where Michael, it's very supernatural, like very, it's not as grounded as Carpenter's original, but in this one, Michael was able to take over the inmates of Smith's Grove, who are under his spell, and they go wild, stark raving mad, and they start tearing up the bed sheets and their pillowcases and fashioning crude white masks that they wrap around their faces, and then they escape Smith's Grove and go out killing people. It's a wild idea, and fans listening to me describe this going, that sounds awful. No, trust me, read Steph's ideas. He presents them with much more style and class than I'm describing them here. But
Marvel Cinematic Universe is getting into a multiverse, and DC is getting into a multiverse, but apparently we almost had a Michael Myers multiverse.
So that was from, again, Steph Hutchinson's trilogy that he imagined, the remake trilogy. Steph, as I already said, wrote some of the comics, some of the most well-liked and well-reviewed comics for the franchise, and he really hates how, I don't want to say hate, I don't want to put words into his mouth. He doesn't really like how disjointed and disconnected the continuities are, and so he was trying to find a way to legitimize all the different continuities. Some people just like the Thorn storyline, 4, 5, and 6. Some people just like the sister trilogy of 1, 2, and H2O. Some people just like Rob Zombie's stuff. Steph Hutchinson, with his supernatural take, found a way to validate all of those continuities. And so at one point, Dr. Loomis is kind of like, he's able to see during the witching hour into alternate realities. It's a fantastic sequence that I'm describing like utter shit. But he starts seeing these other Michaels, and he sees the Halloween 4 Michael. And then he looks over here to this other reality and sees the Rob Zombie Michael. And then he looks over there and he sees a Michael that we've never even seen before. And what he did was he kind of made them all work. It's not like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, but it was a really neat idea. We talk about it in depth in the book, and Steph comments on it. So definitely, if you get the book, check that chapter out.
And is there one, never, filmed idea that you wish we had seen, or one that you thought was like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever seen, or the craziest thing I've ever seen? Is there any in particular that really jump off the page at you?
I'm looking at the table of contents here, so I'm looking at the complete listing of all of the 24 unmade movies. I honestly can find something to like about all of them. There's only one of them that I wasn't crazy about, and I'm not going to say which one that was. But even some of the wilder ones, like we talk about 2 different versions of the Hellraiser crossover. So 2 different versions of Michael versus Pinhead. One of them was insane. It ended with Michael being dragged down into hell by Pinhead and turned into a Cenobite. So Cenobite shape.
Yeah.
And that was, you had Pinhead versus Cenobite Michael. On one hand, what the hell? Like, how far removed is that from John Carpenter's vision? And on the other hand, I'm a fanboy like anyone else. I want to see that fight. I do. I can't help it. I can't help it. Yeah, that just sounds crazy cool to me.
And like I said at the top of the video, the only thing cooler than learning about the movies we got are the ones that we never got. And so where can people find Taking Shape 2 here?
Taking Shape 2 is available in paperback on Amazon, and it's also available for Kindle ebook. And just like all my other books, it's also available as, I think, a 19-hour audiobook from Encyclopocalypse Publications. You can get that on Audible. And, I like to tell people that if you haven't gotten into audiobooks or you're curious, Audible has this great thing where you do the 30-day free trial and you get a free audiobook. Even if you cancel within those first 30 days, you still get to keep the audiobook. So if you want a free audiobook, go do the trial, grab the book, and then cancel. You get to keep the book.
Absolutely. Can't miss there. Yep. Yeah. The books are amazing. Dustin, you're an amazing author. There's also things out there on Phantasm, on Jaws. Hopefully, maybe this, next summer here, you'll come and talk to me about Jaws if you're willing and able. But yeah, definitely check out these books. They're just rich with detail. That if you like these movies, then these are must have. So definitely check them out. Support people living their dreams in writing and everything. And yeah, Dustin, I can't thank you enough for coming on and just telling me all about, the different things, with Freddy, Jason, Halloween, and all and such. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Until next time.